Rising dignified and proud, the towering 67-metre spire of St. Paul's Pro Cathedral has adorned Valletta's skyline since its construction between 1839 and 1846. Built on the conventual home of the German knights, the cathedral was designed by William Scamp. Enduring valiantly through the trials of time and the tumult of World War II, the spire found itself in need of restoration. In 2017, the Church Council resolved to initiate a monumental endeavour: the restoration of the Pro Cathedral building, encompassing both the tower and steeple.
The Anglican Church of St. Paul in Valletta was built in the 19th century. It was, at the time and for a long time, the tallest building in Malta. It actually still is the tallest historical building in Malta. And it's composed mainly of two distinct parts, the church itself and the Tower and Spire. It has a longish history of construction. It's about 7 years, between 1839 and 1846, with the tower being the last element completed. It was subject to many design changes at the construction time, and also subsequent changes through its 100 and plus years of life.
The restoration process can be divided into three main stages: research, site investigations, and review and works. The research process was laborious.
This building is particularly well researched because it's a standalone. It's a landmark of the skyline of Valletta, and it happened to have been already subject to at least 3 or 4 publications, so we had somewhere where to start.
This research led to a very exciting discovery.
In one of the volume, we started seeing references to a document or series of documents which we didn't know existed previously. And in 2018, we actually found a volume in London, which is 880 pages, I believe, something like that, contemporary to the construction of the church, and which from the day of the first foundation stone till the day where the building was completely inaugurated, so between April 1836 till April 1839 till April 1846, we have a daily account of the construction of that building. This is pretty exceptional. In the local context at that time is also extremely exceptional, and the fact that it was preserved, the fact that it happened, the recording is something that we do every day, even today, but the fact that it exists and it's so detailed, it was quite exceptional.
The document is divided in two.
So it's divided in 2 sections per week. One which is the account of people, so we have the trades and names and skills and how many days they worked in the week. And the other one which is the actual bill of quantities, so the quantities of material that were purchased or manufactured for that building. That was critical because at the same time, part of the team was actually looking at the building, and we started seeing some elements which didn't make sense with what we thought the building was made of. So there was a bit of a reconciliation between the written sources and the actual building fabric that allowed us to then decide on a series of investigations.
At the project onset, drone photography emerged as one of the initial activities. This helped in the assessment of the spire and tower's condition prior to the restoration.
An initial drone inspection was done using photogrammetry, where a drone went up the tower and took multiple photos and stitched them together. This gave us an initial idea of what type of deterioration there was on the Tower and Spire, and then of course led us to understand what interventions were necessary. Following this drone inspection, a follow-up was done of a live drone inspection, which was done live. That allowed us to delve deeper into a better understanding of what deterioration there was. A GPR investigation took place. GPR stands for Ground Penetration Radar. 2 investigations actually took place. The initial one was before the interventions were carried out. Basically, we scanned certain parts of the external elevations to understand what or where metal could be found. This gave us a good idea of what interventions and where these interventions need to take place.
A scaffolding was built around the spire.
The scaffolding had to be wide enough to allow for the materials that were going to be used on this job. We were dealing with large stone blocks, so naturally the scaffolding had to be wide enough to allow for these works. It had also to allow for the type of equipment that was going to be used in this work, especially that was used in the structural strengthening works. The scaffolding's design and construction also had to face various challenges. For example, on the side of the sea, the scaffolding couldn't rest on the roofs of the underlying third-party properties below the terraces. So a structure meant to transfer the loads coming down from the scaffolding was built above ground, and it had the role of transferring those loads safely to the ground.
Once the scaffolding was erected, the team could promptly conduct several on-site investigations. These inquiries played a crucial role in the planning and implementation of the necessary interventions for the restoration of the tower's stone structure.
When the scaffolding was erected, we could inspect the stone fabric at a closer distance, and we could see that the deterioration was quite severe. Apart from cracking, which resulted from the metal bands expanding, this cracking at times not even visible because it was on the internal part of the stone, we noticed a lot of alveolar deterioration, particularly at the top of the tower, due to the tower being so exposed to sea currents and wind elements. For that reason, we had to start taking decisions on how to intervene, with a lot of stone replacement that had to be carried out to ensure that the structural integrity of the tower and the spire was always maintained. We also reconstructed the urns at the top of the finials, which we know from photographic evidence had been installed on site at the construction of the tower. However, somewhere along the way were removed, were lost, and so we reconstructed them in hard stone to ensure that they are once again reintegrated into the tower and are durable to withstand all the elements.
Another aspect of the review process was building information modeling, also known as BIM.
When we talk about BIM, we mean the assembly of intelligent objects of a building. When I say objects, I mean walls, slabs, doors, etc. Each of these objects contains geometrical and non-geometrical information, and also external files can be linked into that. So this changed the way we usually work as an architects and provides new tools for us as architects. One of the first things that it provides to us is that because the BIM model becomes an intelligent object, it can be used to perform different simulations, such as, for example, structural analysis, environmental analysis, lighting analysis, things that before we couldn't do because we didn't have enough information to do the simulation. Another thing that we can start to do when we have a BIM model is that we can fill it, we can provide as much information as we need it. This is especially important when we are talking about historic assets and historic buildings. No? We have to understand that a historic building has a lifetime in which a lot of interventions, evolutions have been occurred. Also, there is a lot of things happening in an historic building, degradations, pathologies, etc. We need to have as much information as possible before any intervention or any restoration that we produce inside of the building. And that's why in the last years we have been using a point cloud. A point cloud is a 3D scanner of an existing building in which we can obtain thousands of points, each of them representing the exact position of the surface with its colors and etc. On the process of sample, we have used a system that we call a scan-to-beam, in which after we receive the point cloud of the existing building, we use it to position it every intelligent object of the beam model in its correct position, having in that way a model as accurate as possible to the existing building.
It was the case for us to experience the BIM methodology as let's say a process in which you can consider the project itself as a live document, which means that it can be considered a tool available to a constant review process, and in case one may need to intervene again in the future. As we said, we clearly experienced this when we faced the delicate process of the spire stones doweling and replacement. And this happened thanks to constant actions.
This kind of project modeling in BIM allow us also to later on use it for planning and communication. For instance, we keep adding detail to the interior spaces, like the doors or the columns and so on. So we are not having like a proper 3D interior model that the client or the future visitor of the center can understand better. So that's a very good base for planning and communication, as we said, because it can be used not only for the complexity of adding data and so on to the model, but also later on adding texture or creating walkthrough through the spaces or so on, so we can plan, for instance, the accessibility to the building and how that's going to work, or different options in the design of it. And also afterwards it can be used for museography or lighting design or any future exhibition that may take in the main space or any other area. So it can be very good not only for the client and for us to understand the space and how that works, but also for the future of the visitors to also understand it. Also, why not to use it for virtual reality examples, or how the building was a few centuries ago or a few years ago, or how it could be in the future, and these kind of things.
During the interventions, we did a secondary GPR investigation in which we not only scanned the external facade but also the internal facades. This gave us an even better idea of where metal could possibly be. Something interesting about this GPR system is that it does not detect specifically metal, but detects a change in material, so it doesn't specifically inform us that there is a possibility of metal in that location. So this would normally be followed up by drilling and the use of endoscopy, which is a small camera which could give us a very good view of metal that is embedded inside the masonry wall. Something simple that also uses a magnet that would attract certain fragments of metal that would indicate that there is metal in this specific location.
The thorough examination of the spire unveiled signs of deterioration and damage, demanding prompt attention. Certain metal bands integrated into the stone during initial construction were in a state of decay, causing cracks in the stone.
The works involved the replacement of a substantial number of blocks because they were not in a good condition. This replacement of these blocks in concentrated areas, together with the removal of the rotating bands, meant that the tower had to be temporarily braced during the works in order to ensure that the tower was structurally safe and the structural integrity of the tower was maintained at all times.
Some of the metal bands were removed or treated.
During the construction of the tower in the 19th century, various metal bands were inserted in the masonry stone walls. These, with time, started rusting, causing enormous stresses on the masonry. The masonry stone blocks started rusting. and various stone wedges started becoming to get detached from the masonry walls.
Where these metal bends are still embedded within the walls, a cathodic protection system has been applied, and basically the aim here is to reduce the corrosion and the expansion of the metal bands and obviously the consequent damage to the stone.
The metal bands were found to be in a very deteriorated state within the tower. These metal bands are in the form of cramps, so they are a metal band which then turns at the ends, which made them very difficult to remove. In areas where we could remove them because the amount of stone replacement that was required allowed for it, we removed the metal bands. In areas where the metal bands had to be kept because removing them would have caused more damage, we applied a cathodic protection system. This system is one where an electrical current is passed through the metal band that stops the corrosion process. The corrosion process is what causes most damage, since when metal corrodes, it expands and therefore causes pressure on the stone, which causes it to crack. So once we stop that corrosion process with the cathodic protection system, it would allow for this pressure and the cracking to be mitigated, to be stopped.
The procedure also involved the meticulous numbering of every stone, whether it remained in its original position or was being replaced.
My role in the project was mainly naming all the stone blocks so that we can record and document every intervention that happens within the tower, and helping kind of with the documentation of the interventions that were done and that will be done. It's a big project, but if you kind of split it up and split into different kind of smaller tasks to make it easier kind of to approach. The biggest challenge for me was going up the scaffolding because it's really high. I'm afraid of heights, so it's really kind of, you feel really proud working on such an important project, which affects the skyline of Valletta at the end of the day. Because like that, you understand the project in steps, because you're looking at it from the beginning kind of till the end, so you understand every step kind of the way.
Work was also directed towards the restoration of the timber beams.
One important aspect of the building of the St. Paul's steeple is the fact that there are these timber structures within the tower. These consist of a series of timber platforms interconnected by stairs and ladders. Another structure that is present within the steeple is the bell frame, which holds the bells in place within the bell chamber. Various studies were carried out to determine the state of conservation of the timber, as well as the timber species that was used in the original construction. During the years, the timber has suffered various levels of decay. Some of this decay is superficial, while in other cases, this has affected the structural integrity of some of the timber members, in which case these will have either to be restored or replaced.
This process also yielded some very interesting discoveries.
What is very, very interesting is that in those documents, we actually did not find any reference to any scaffolding. It does not exist. There's not even the name so far. I mean, scaffolding is not labeled. So we have masons, we have boys, we have cleaning, we have everything. If we had someone that had to fix a spike or the wheel of the cart, it's written. If someone had to cart something from the marina, it's written. But the scaffolding doesn't exist. So it's something that shows how the construction was progressing. So they built the structure and they erected their support structure as they went along. So quite interesting. Then, of course, when people were very, very proud or wanted to mark their side, they used to sign, if you want, so write illegally, you would say, maybe sometimes, a graffiti somewhere on a part of the building where they intervened.
Internally inside the tower, there is a timber structure, and on some of the timber beams we found Roman numerals marked on the beams. And in order to document them as best as we could, we looked into it further to see if there are more and what their meaning could possibly be. And in fact, we did find more, which led us to conclude that these were not just Roman numerals, but carpenter's markings, which were marked to indicate where different beams would intersect.
Today that still happens. We actually found also what we would refer to as a time capsule. So someone who went to put behind the stone they replaced a little cigarette packet, wrote his name and the date 1957. So we know that that stone was intervened upon in 1957.
In addition to the restoration efforts, various services were incorporated into the framework.
As part of the project, we also integrated many services into the building, which till this point did not exist. We installed fire detection services, we installed a structural health monitoring system to make sure that any movement within the stone fabric is recorded and we would be able to intervene at the appropriate time. We also installed lighting, we installed lightning protection system, all within the very small area of the tower.
So all these systems are sort of coming into play once the restoration works itself are completed. The tower itself houses all the wiring and the components required to power these systems, to control them, and to be able to gather information from them.
The restoration project, which was a major one, with the main focus being the tower and the steeple, which everyone can see. There was much more behind the scenes that was happening, and this required millions to restore and to take on this project. And part of the funding required involves EU funding, which we applied for. That was my responsibility to get the funding. But beyond the restoration of the tower and the steeple from the outside, there was other work that took place. We installed webcams at the top of the tower, which soon will be available on a mobile app. And these were also funded through EU funding. And access, the cathedral wasn't accessible for persons with difficulty and accessibility issues. And access, including a ramp and a lift, have been installed through EU funding. And also the very funding of publicity about the project to show that EU funding has been provided, including this very documentary, have been covered through EU funds.
All this would not have been achieved without the careful and diligent leadership of Sir Martin Lane, who sadly recently passed away. The original project leader, who resigned to illness in 2020, was replaced by myself. Thank you.
As we stand before the magnificently restored steeple of St. Paul's Cathedral, it is a moment of deep gratitude and reflection. This Valletta landmark was built between 1839 and 1844 and paid for by Queen Adelaide. Apart from its striking impact to the skyline, it is also a memorial to all those in its almost 200-year history who have passed through Malta and worshipped here in times of war and peace, especially to those who paid the ultimate price. The steeple was never restored and in 2016 was in a precarious state. This monumental 7-year restoration achievement raised over 8 million euros and was made possible through the generous hearts and unwavering dedication of our esteemed benefactors and the tireless efforts of our volunteers. EU funding was also a significant help. All this would not have been possible without the initiative, generosity and leadership of Sir Martin and Lady Lang, collaborating closely with a few key individuals and various committees' efforts in Malta and the UK. There are far too many people to mention, but I must also thank Martin Shikluna, our first chairman, Christopher Wicker, Tony Wright and Godfrey Kennedy for their unwavering commitment to this project. Their contributions have not only preserved a piece of our history, but have also ensured that this iconic landmark continues to inspire awe and faith for generations to come. So on behalf of everyone who cherishes this cathedral and the magnificent Valletta skyline, we extend our heartfelt thanks. Your support has been the cornerstone of this project, a true testament to what can be accomplished when we all come together for a noble cause. Thank you for helping us, keeping the legacy of St. Paul's Cathedral alive. Thank you.
The Tower and Spire of St. Paul's Pro Cathedral now stand proud and preserved. They are a testament to the visionary spirit, unwavering diligence, and profound commitment of those architects, builders and restorers who laboured tirelessly to revive this historical edifice to its erstwhile splendour. The silhouette of Valletta's skyline has been safeguarded, an echo of endurance that is woven into the fabric of time.